Welcome to today's episode on Career Breaking Gender Stereotypes. Traditionally, there are roles that have been made very specific to men to take on. And in recent times, we have seen how women have broken these barriers and we can still see women smashing it. Today, I'm joined by Evelyn Okpanachi, Editor-in-Chief for Rich Women Africa magazine. She's also a leadership coach and advocate for Women Recognition Society. And also Tosin Oshinowo, who's an architect and the founder of lifestyle furniture called Ilela, House of Lines. The reason I've paired these two amazing women today is because they are working in a niche and not your typical career stereotype for women. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining. I guess the very first question, I don't know if you'd sort of remember my intro, talking around how stereotypical roles that have been created for whatever reason. Do you believe in this, and why do you think we continue to have these issues with gender stereotypes career?
Okay, so I think, to be fair, I think this is probably over centuries we've had a disparity in, I would say, what a woman does and the man does. And I feel that it's probably more around societal, so not only cultural, it's down to society as a whole. But that's changed. So there is a stereotype that still exists, but I believe that's changed because you will see now there is male-dominated roles and there's also female-dominated roles. So if you look at, for example, nursery nurses, at least 97%, I'm talking about in the UK, but at least 97% of nursery nurses are female. There was a time that being a doctor was very male orientated and being a nurse was very female orientated. But now you have, there are male nurses, there are female nurses, you have, female doctors. So, that has changed over time. In the early days, you would see that there was no female doctors, and that grew. Recently, we've got the first female VP in the United States. Things are changing, and it's all about, I would say, for women now, yes, I'm talking about women empowerment, but it's also about women making room for themselves. Sometimes I do believe there is a stereotype, but it really depends on us as individuals. Do we want to fit that status quo, or do we want to break limits, break grounds? And also, you can be a wife, you can be a mother, you can be VP, We're
going to come to the reasons, perhaps, women don't find it comfortable or easy to sort of break those barriers. Tosin, I'm going to come to you because we know that stereotypes are things that aren't just thrown at us as an adult. It's something that it's imbibed in us. We grow up, sort of believing this is the norm. And according to statistics, we know that stereotypes are imposed into children from childhood. So for yourself and for three of us, there are lots of things that we've been told or we've seen growing up. Why do you think this is the case? Would you say it's because of lack of representation, which I think Evelyn alluded to earlier on? Or is it because it just seems pretty for women to be nurses and more sort of masculine and macho for men to be engineers?
So I think this all really starts with how society is formed. And we live, or our system of the modern world is actually based on a patriarchal society. So this is where obvious gender roles, a mother stays at home, she works, a father goes out. And so that determines, the type of employment that you have. But let's also bear in mind that based on this patriarchal society, since the Second World War, you started having more women in the workplace. Before that, you didn't. It became quite normal for women to go to school, to be educated, to start to take up more significantly seen as masculine roles. And I think from that period to now, we've made a lot of change, but there's still so much room. There's so much work to be done, And a lot of this being a patriarchal society is in our mindsets. You will be surprised at how many women who even employ both men and women will always subconsciously pay the men more. It's not because they have intentionally done it. And I'll be honest, I've actually been victim of that myself, but it's subconscious. You just expect certain things. And we almost have to tell ourselves and program ourselves to think about this differently. And then this also goes back into the workplace. In my case, as a woman working within architecture, I know for a fact, if my firm goes to bid for work compared to a man, they will probably pay him more. Not because he's going to do a better job, but just subconsciously as well. It's something that we have to work against. In the case of my personal situation and my family, I'm from a family of girls, so there are no sons. There are some men you meet in the workplace who don't even understand that they're treating you as slightly substandard. And when you have to flag it up, it causes problems. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done.
Thank you very much for sharing that. I was reading the other day, and I came across another article that talked about perhaps the reason, boys and girls are sort of wired, to think in a certain way, in a stereotypical ways, because growing up, you would often see girls playing with Barbie dolls and you see boys playing with trucks. And so it's as though there's just been so many things that's been sort of fixed in our mindset. And I like how you did say, Tosin, that as mothers, as parents, it's very important that we don't start gender stereotyping our children with what they can and they can't do. I'll move over to you quickly, Evelyn. I've got a question for you. Would you say that there is a significant amount of women who you have come across who did a particular or went through a particular career because they were told to do so by their parents, and now trying to really find who they are and to do what they love to do?
Not necessarily. I think sometimes it's about people finding purpose. So most of the conversations I've had with women, it's not around my parents have told me to do this and I've gone into this career. I mean, I've probably seen that a little bit more with the more younger generation that I'm speaking to now. I think the issue that I've discovered more, to be fair, is around the lack of self-belief. I don't think this is probably more added to stereotype, because it is, Tosin alluded to this already, which is about the mindset. So even in, whoever I've coached and mentored, I work first on the mindset. Because what I've realized is it's not so much even the environment, it's what you believe of yourself. And, you can't change. Sometimes you can't change your environment, but you can actually change your mind. If I'm being really honest, I've coached both men and females. I've looked at, sometimes you look at the tenacity of the person, you look at how committed somebody is to see their goals, to see themselves as an architect. To me, it's in the mind. It starts with the mind. So even if the society is telling you one thing, if in the end we form ourselves as individuals, don't we? And we start developing that.
There is also that cultural shock there, isn't it? Where we've been told, Tosin, and I'm sure, I think you alluded to that earlier on, as a girl, you've got to be this, you've got to be that, you've got to be seen, not heard. And so all of these things bundle together. Even when you have the tenacity, your mind is so wired to be seen, not heard. So you've not been raised to kind of be a go-getter, to sort of just go for it regardless and just keep going. And I think perhaps maybe that could be another reason why, I guess women, we sort of often find ourselves in this situation. What are your thoughts, Tosin?
I think you're very right. I mean, growing up in an African household, and I don't have any brothers, but I have cousins. And I know that boys are not in the kitchen. Mommy will say, oh yeah, all the girls, we're going to go and make stew. And the boys are watching TV. This is standard across a lot of African households, This idea that, they're boys, so they'll be fine. Somebody else will do it for them. And I'll say this, that's why a lot of African women tend to do very well, because they are pushed very early to get on and get things done themselves. But with the boys, sometimes you end up having situations where you see someone much older who's very slack. It's about his upbringing. A lot of this is down to upbringing. And also as parents, this is important that we need to almost erase this kind of mental blockade that exists between boys and girls. Treat children as genderless. My daughter is 9. She plays computer games. I mean, the other day I was thinking, this isn't very girly. But I had to remind myself that, if she's going to be very good at this, if she's going to end up being a techie, I should encourage her in that direction. I shouldn't tell her that it's for boys. Again, we go back to upbringing, how we expose ourselves culturally, how our cultural connotations come into our everyday lives. We live in a modern world. These principles of the wife and the mother staying at home, this is a period long gone. In many households today, if both parents don't work, there is not enough money. So, everyone has to sit up, and that attitude has to change. As Dr. Evelyn has said, this is about confidence and competence. I believe very strongly that competence comes with time and practice and training. Confidence is fundamental. If you don't have confidence, you can't achieve anything.
Thank you very much. I've kind of picked two things from it. I like how you said treat children as genderless. I think that's so paramount and very important. Thank you so much. Evelyn, I've got a question for you. Now, I know back in the days, probably a decade ago or so, being a coach isn't something that you often find women doing. You'd find a few women here and there, but not a lot as we currently see. What was the shift for you, considering that it was a male-dominated industry. What was the shift for you, and what kept you going in that line?
Well, quite interestingly, I actually didn't see it as a male-dominated industry. So it wasn't something, again, maybe that alludes to, I was trying to play with this idea of what Tosin just said now around genderless, because I haven't, although I do believe in terms of, a female, I have daughters as well, that they can do anything, that they want to, regardless of whether it's male or female. But I guess for me, it's never come into my mind. It's just the same thing. I have this conversation around race as well. It doesn't come into my mind in the sense of I want to do something, I would do it. It hasn't really affected me. I couldn't tell you how many, it's not something I've researched. I couldn't tell you how many male coaches out there and how many female. I can tell you I'm one, and I'm doing well at what I'm doing, and I enjoy it.
And I think that's good. I mean, it probably just shows your upbringing. I think a lot of what I'm hearing is that your upbringing, it was pretty much of a genderless. It was a good balance of genderless and still knowing you're a girl. So I guess a lot of things you didn't sort of have them growing up. Now, moving on quickly, and whilst we kind of stay within the topic of today, which is career gender stereotypes. Now, I was doing a research. I realized that it's actually not just women trying to break through some other sort of careers. We've had men as well, going from the normal, usual being an architect to looking for jobs because they just want to be able to earn their keep, right? So you see men breaking into makeup industry, you see men breaking into just lots of different industries. How have you been able to sort of cope with the situations you explained earlier on, which is how men are being treated versus how women are being treated in your industry as an architect?
So, this is a really interesting question, and I'm going to relay it in relation to a lady who came to work in the firm, who's still with us now, Molade. And when you go to sites, when you go to the construction site, so she's Muslim, so she covers her head and she wears long dresses. And I had to tell her, you need to wear a pair of jeans. There's certain things, when you're working in that kind of environment, first of all, you have to come across as very firm. So you're not coming across as a fluffy woman. You have to come across as very firm. You are entering a realm that you are the minority. So you have to come correct to the table. You have to position yourself. You have to compose yourself accordingly. Now, it doesn't mean you have to be nasty or difficult, but they need to know that you're coming in a position of authority. And what I've learned working within the construction industry in Nigeria is once you position yourself correctly, half the job is done. Because even if they're going to make the sly comments initially, once they realize that you're here for the work, then everybody aligns accordingly. For every young architect who's coming in, people who've seen me on site, their reaction to the next female that comes to the site meeting will be different. The more people, the more we have more women in positions of these kind of authorities within all the industries, the easier it will be for it to become the norm for the next generation of young girls who are coming up. But first and foremost, your reference should always be that I'm here because I am good. I'm here because I am competent. I am here to do a job.
Know your worth and the value you bring to the table.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Evelyn, have you got anything to add to that?
I do believe that, we are on a journey. We are coming a long way. We look at our parents and we look at how it was for them. It was, interestingly, my mother said her dad said to her that he wanted to put all of his money in her to educate her because his friends were not educating their daughters because they were only expected to get married and have children. But whereas my granddad was insisting on educating my mum because he wanted her to be a value to them and to the society. So, I do believe that, there's a long way. And as you rightly said, there's a long way that we have come. Let's give credit to where credit's due. So, as I said, if you look at a decade ago, where were we, in power, in the corridors of power? What did we have a seat at the table? So it's that.
We're still trying to get some more seats, aren't we?
No, we are, but it does take time, and then it also takes people to step forward. So looking at Tosin here in architecture, how many people are willing to step forward? That's something I deal with, quite a lot in mentoring and coaching as well. Is everybody has a lovely idea of what they want, but how many people are willing to take the steps and do it? So it's all within your reach. And maybe that's where I'm coming from, a limitless factor, which is, it is the mind, it is what can you achieve. And you first have to break it and conceive it in your mind first before you step there. How many women, and so that's my probably question, is how many women are willing to do that?
Good question. And I guess that's for our viewers. I was looking at Forbes, top 100 CEO Forbes last year. And within the engineering industry, there was just one female CEO. And it just really shows that things are really, really bad. We need to have a seat at the table. And I think perhaps for the percentage of the women who are struggling with just being bold enough to take that bold step, it's perhaps a lack of representation. You know, you want to do something and you don't necessarily have the courage to do it. Who is doing? No one is doing. You know what? I'm just going to take a back seat. But I think the beauty of the conversation we're having is having a good balance with yourself, Evelyn, saying you can reach, you can be whoever. To kind of wrap this all up, guys, it's been a very amazing time with you guys. And I have personally learned, Tosin, while she was saying stuff, I was writing, and Evelyn as well. I think what would be good to hear from both of you is there's someone watching now and thinking, I'd like to be able to do all of this great thing. I'd like to be an architect. I'd like to be bold, like Tosin said. I'd like to be courageous, you know, as Evelyn said. But how can I do that? What will be the 3 things that you would throw at any woman who comes to you and asking, how did you do it? How did you get to where you are? I'll start with you, Tosin.
I think first and foremost, be clear on your dream. It's so important to have clarity of what you want to achieve. I think you should also be flexible with your dream. As a woman, there are many things that life will throw at you: children, family, responsibilities. You know, you may have to change your path to get there, but it doesn't mean that you should change your final agenda, your final goal points. You know, and thirdly, just believe in yourself. You know, God has put you here for a reason. You have a purpose, and you have the right to fulfill it.
Over to you, Evelyn.
So I would say definitely almost mirroring what Tosin has said as well, which is number one is self-belief. It starts with you. So it's not about what anybody else thinks about you, it's what you think about yourself. So it's really about your own self-belief. First of all, what is your purpose? What is your purpose? It's not what, you know, before you start jumping into what I've realized with women, we jump into so many different lanes. First of all, what is your purpose? Once you know your purpose, then you know where you're going. So I think it's, you know, and what's your why as well? Why are you here? What are you, you know, have you come to do? So, and then believe in that. So then nobody else can convince you otherwise. But when you're jumping from one thing to another and not sure about your purpose or who you are, you know, we ask people this question a lot of the time: who are you? And a lot of the time I receive blank looks because that people don't know. A lot of people don't know who they are. So first of all is understanding who you are. What's your purpose? And then delivering on that and being consistent and persistent. What I've noticed along the road is that people start things, but they never finish. And so, as Tosin rightly said, you know, the goal remains the same, but the method can change. And so, and also again, it's looking at whatever you want to do as well, make it smart, you know, make it specific, make it measurable, is it achievable? You look at that, you know, and realistic, and put a time scale against it. So whatever I do, I put a smart methodology around it. But I think the first thing is, as I said, break the limitations of your mind. Believe you can do all things. And that's the reason why I push it back onto the person. It's not that you can't do it. It's first of all, what you want to do. So I've spoken to some people and they'll say, great, I want to be a project manager. No, I want to be a business analyst. No, I want to do that. And, you know, and you know, that's some of the routes I've came through. But that's because they feel it looks good and they don't know that's what they don't want to do. So you need to identify yourself. You need to identify what is important to you. What would you do even if you were not being paid? Would you still want to be an architect? Is that still your passion? Would you still want to, you know, be a mechanic, be under cars? You know, for me, it's not even about the gender roles. To be fair, it starts with self. I always say it starts with self. You know, people can try and impose limitations on you, but it's up to you whether you accept those. So it starts with you. What do you want to be? Who do you want to be?
Very powerful. Thank you so much, ladies. I have definitely learned a whole lot. And this brings us to a wrap. Now it's the time for us all to be very intentional about making bold steps to take on roles we love, regardless of the stereotypes. It is never, ever too late to start, for you would only regret the things that you don't ever get to do. 20 years from now, you'll be more disappointed about the things you did not do rather than the things you did. So explore, dream, and discover. Thank you so much, Tosin and Evelyn, for being my guest today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
If you have found any of our interviews or videos interesting and engaging, click the subscribe button and also turn on your notification just to make sure you never miss a thing. And don't forget to like, comment, and also share the videos with your friends and families and get them to get involved in the conversation as well.